Hello and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, hi, I'm Cassidy. If it's not, thanks for always tuning into my videos. Today we're doing a 5-star audit video. This video is for my stats people. The people who want to know stats, want to love stats, want to know what, statistically speaking, I like in books. I first saw this video done on Meg with Books channel and I thought it was absolutely so fun to watch and such a good idea that I decided to do it. There will be a partnered video with this where I do a 1-star audit video, literally this video, but what I least like. Meg with Books video will be linked in the description bar below. You should definitely go check it out. But let's get into it. I'm going to pull up Goodreads over here and we're going to just look at all my 5 and 4 stars because I consider 5 and 4 stars favorites since I give out so little 5 stars, and see if there's any trends we can spot in my reading taste. Essentially, like, we're thinking about tropes, archetypes, writing stylistic choices that I see repeatedly talked about in things that I like. I'm also going to, as Meg did in her video, try to give you some options of what these could be on my TBR currently, and let's just get on into the video, okay? Okay. I think one of the first things I've always said about my reading taste is that I love multi-POV'd stories. Now, if we're looking at it, it's quite apparent that, like, Robin Hobb is multi-POV'd, Malice is multi-POV'd, A Touch of Light is multi-POV'd, The Ninth Reign is multi-POV'd. Like, all of these are multi-POV'd. Like, pretty much every single book. But I actually think I could niche this down even more. I think I specifically really like when there's 3 characters. I know A Touch of Light has 3 characters that we, like, exclusively follow. Another one that I liked that has 3 characters is No Man's of the Sea. A King's Radiance has 3 characters. I think, I could be wrong, but does the Bone Shard series only have 3 characters? Like, main characters? I could be wrong. We could be following 4 POVs in that one. But I do think that I typically like a story that has, for sure, multi-POV'd, but I think that 3 really works for me. A favorite that I have not seen on this list yet that I know does it is Elantris. And I think that the reason I like that is the archetype of the characters. Like, we typically have a character that's like this, a character that's like this, and a character that's like this. So I find it's less confusing, and also the stories are still very engaging. Just because a book is multi-charactered or 3 characters does not automatically mean I'm going to love it, but it is something that's working in the favor of these books when I read it. Because, I mean, there are books that I have not liked that are multi-POV'd. Are there any that are 3 characters? 1 or 2 stars? I think Black Sun is 3 characters, and I did not like that book. But interestingly enough, I don't think I have a single 1 or 2 star book on here that is only 3 characters. So does that mean if it's 3 characters, typically it'll get 3 or above? Based off the back of this book, I think it could be 3 characters, but I could be wrong and it could only be 2, but I think it could be 3, which is We Ride the Storm by Devin Madsen, which is a book I'm really excited for. Another one is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. I think it's 3 POVs. One is You, which is really weird, but I do think it's 3 POVs. But again, I'm just guessing based on flip-throughs. So if you know any stories that have 3 character POVs, let me know down below. I actually feel like this video was life-changing for me. Like, I now need to focus on finding books like that. So 3 character POVs, send them down below. Another one that I think I've talked about on my channel before is dragons, but I think I'm going to extend dragons to an animal companion. I typically really like stories with animal companions. So here we can say Hobb, the Rainwild Chronicles, which most people don't like as much, I loved, and they have dragons as an animal companion, not just because dragons don't always work for me, but I find animal companions work for me, if that makes sense. So we have an animal companion here, we have an animal companion in Malice, we do have animal companions in The Fall. There are dragons in Fires of Vengeance, but not animal companions. Dragonflight, there's animal companions. The Ninth Reign, there's animal companions. And A Touch of Light, there's animal companions. So almost all of my 5 stars from this year have an animal companion. That's not even looking at my 3 stars. But of course, in my 1 or 2 stars, both the Bone Shard Emperor and Dragon Mage have animal companions, and I didn't like them. So it's not always a given. But the original, the first book in the Bone Shard series has an animal companion, and I loved that book. Assassin's Apprentice has an animal companion. I'm not going to say any of the rest of those do. The Black Coast does and doesn't have animal companions. It's really hard to explain, but there are the baby dragons in it, which I think I would kind of count, but not really. But I do think that I really like animal companions. Animal companions, another one that is impossibly hard. And how? I could pull up dragon books. I have a lot of dragon books. So if we're counting just dragon books, then fine. But I want more than that. I want more than just dragons, because dragons aren't always animal companions. But I do think Ascendant by Michael R. Miller is a dragon companion. For sure a companion. I believe he ends up deciding to bond with a blind dragon, which is seen as like not done before, because dragons in this world kill the weak, and so he kind of defies the odds, defends this blind dragon. So obviously there's like a bond happening there, so I think we will get a very true animal companion story in this. Other than that, lots of the dragon stories I have are not animal companions per se, but just like dragons in the world. So again, if you have any animal companion stories, let me know down below, because I need to read more animal companions apparently. It's a thing. Okay, let's continue on. The last one that I think I have written down in terms of things that I already know that I like, I think that I really like stories with unlikable characters. So if I'm looking at this, I think Dragonhaven has some unlikable characters. I think Malice are all likable. Fires of Vengeance has an unlikable character. Tao is very unlikable. There Are No Saints has this, although likable, I guess, he's a serial killer. So a little bit, I would say, like, morally gray, which makes him kind of unlikable. So like characters are all likable, but like No Exit has a very unlikable character that I like. You know what? City of Brass, people might come at me for. I think that a lot of people didn't like Allie, and Allie was my favorite. I much preferred Allie over Nari, so I think that I could put City of Brass, the David trilogy, as an unlikable character for me. A Deadly Education, everyone complains about our narrator. I love her. She's an unlikable character. The Poppy War. Rin is such an unlikable character. Nona can be very unlikable because she's morally gray. Also, a 4-star somewhere would be Prince of Thorns, who is unlikable. I didn't even look at the 4 stars here. I think the Truth Witch series is another one where we have a lot of unlikable characters in there. And same with Daughter of Red Winter. We have an unlikable character. These are characters, I should probably say that most of my unlikable characters are coming from the idea that I'm seeing a lot of people just not like them. So I would take There Are No Saints off that, because I feel like everyone likes There Are No Saints characters. But I've seen a lot of the overall reviews being like, we had troubles with the main character, they weren't as likable as we wanted them. So that's my definition of an unlikable character, and they just seem to work for me. The only one I'm completely guessing for. It's the Wolf of Aranjara, which is the Chronicles of the Wolf Queen, or used to be called the Chronicles of the Bitch Queen. I think that she will be unlikable. I think she'll be a hard protagonist to get behind, so I'm putting it on this list, but I truly have no idea. So if you know any characters that are like, you've always been told that people hate, let me know, because apparently I like unlikable characters. Oh, I have another trend, morally gray characters. I think that this is a really big thing that I like in fantasy, is morally gray, a little bit grimdark, those characters that struggle with good and bad. I think just characters that are telling a story where like they feel really real to me. They're not always making the right choices, and they're not always making the wrong choices. Just like the balance between good and evil is really shown in them. I think that there is a character in Malice that this works for, but they were my least favorite character in the Faithful and the Fallen series. Morally gray, easily, There Are No Saints. The Ninth Reign has a morally gray character in it. We have Half a King, morally gray character. She Who Became the Sun, morally gray. Prince of Thorns, I mean, he's just grimdark. I think Nomads of the Sea, there is a morally gray character in this. Winds of Strife, very morally gray characters. And the Mind F series, also another one where there's morally gray characters. We're following a serial killer. In the Name of All Things, in the Course of Dragon series, there are morally gray characters, but they aren't our like focus, so I'm not sure I would count this book necessarily, but it is in there, and my favorite parts of it are these two characters that really are morally gray to me. Live Ships does have a character like that, also my least favorite character in it, but I think that character still adds to the overall story and why I love those stories so much. Although I wasn't rooting for that character to win, his depth was just like, it just added to the story so much for me. So I don't think it has to be a main protagonist, I think it just needs to be there. The Poppy War. Rin is morally gray in my mind. I would say Six of Crows, there's probably some morally gray characters in there. But yeah, I definitely think that is something that I really like in fantasy. We have morally gray characters, which to me is different than unlikable characters, but I get the resemblance of them. But I do think that there's morally gray characters who are really, really well liked. I think Winds of Strife, we have a morally gray character who's very easy to love. But I have actually a pretty big list of these. This is something that I've known for a while that I really like in fantasy, so I've just been like reassured by the statistics that I like it. All 4 of these books I think count. We have The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. This is grimdark, like iconic Daddy Grimdark. That's what we all call him. So I need to read it. Definitely full of morally gray characters, but I've always heard everyone liking these characters. So that's why I still think that they're likable characters. They're just morally gray characters. Do we see a difference, or am I the only one? The Pariah. We're following an outlaw in the story on his quest for vengeance, and I find vengeance stories often lead to morally gray characters because vengeance is not heroic. Vengeance is one of those darker aspects of humanity, so I do think that this is a morally gray story, morally gray character, but I do think that he will be very likable. Kings of the Wild, I'm not entirely sure about. I know we have a band of mercenaries. Mercenaries feel very morally gray to me, but they could not be. But someone let me know down below if they are. A Crown for Cold Silver by Alex Marshall. This is grimdark. And I feel like that needs no other explanation. Grimdark equals morally gray most of the time, if not more than morally gray. I think that we will have characters in here that I really, really adore for being morally gray. I do think some of the characters in this story could be unlikable, but I just haven't heard enough people talk about this story to really put it in that unlikable character category. Okay, we have 4. How many am I aiming for? I have no idea. What else is like a trend here? I don't really see any color trends. Like, obviously I like a lot of blue books, but there's blue books everywhere. It's just a big trend in fantasy. Nomads of the Sea is set on boats, and so is Live Ships, and so is Half a King. So I do think this is something else I also really like. I really think that I could broaden this, and I really just like unique settings, unique atmospheres. So things that are just a different setting than other stories that you're used to. A lot of these are just own voices. I just want things that are different than that like white European historical setting. So we have Nomads of the Sea, which is in an I can't say the word, bunch of islands, and lots of it takes place on boats on the water. Half a King just has a giant water scene, so if I'm going with water specifically, I do like books that are based on water, and I want more of them, because I think that setting just adds to the overall story. So I think I am gonna make this like boats, like boats. Like, I want water-based fantasy stories. Obviously, there is a big one that I don't like. The Tide Child trilogy was just not for me. But I think I've only read those 4 stories that are set on water. Live Ships, Half a King, it just has there's a decent amount on a boat, okay? And I liked that scene. And Nomads of the Sea. Are there any other? I mean, maybe just water in general, because if we're looking at my horror likes too, From Below, Rolling in the Deep, Into the Drowning Deep, I also really liked, as well as Slimer happens like on a boat in the water. So yeah, I think I really like water settings, boat settings, things like that. I think it adds to like an isolated setting in horror and thriller, which is why I like it. And in fantasy, it just adds like this unique element that we need to like discover. I would maybe also count the Black Coast for this, as we have different islands and some of the story revolves around the water. It's not completely, but it does lean towards that, and I did find that part interesting. They have some like lore about the water and how the island spacing affects how cultures have spread and everything like that. I like the add-on of water. I definitely think that I like water settings. Are there any other that like involve water? I mean, The Girl on the Ice is ice. That's pretty much water. Water-based settings. I know none. None. I have none on my TBR. I need your help. I need water-based. Like, this is one of the ones that I'm strongly looking for. Is there just a lack of them in fantasy? Like, is it just me who likes them? Does nobody out there want more water-based fantasies? Because I do. I really do. I think another thing that I could probably pinpoint is genre bending. I think it's been something that I've been really looking for lately. I don't know if it will show as much in my past stats, but as I'm reading more and more, I want those genre bending fantasies. We have Ash of the Sun, which is sci-fi fantasy. We have Into the Drowning Deep, which is sci-fi horror. We have the Ninth Reign, which is sci-fi fantasy. Maybe I just want sci-fi genre bending. But like we do have like dark romance, which is like, I would say like romance horror, which Into the Dark by Dana Isley is definitely like horror romance. And same with like Satan's Affair, which should be on here somewhere. Satan's Affair is like horror romance, horror erotica. So I think that I just want genre bending things. Lock and Key I would call horror fantasy. I mean, fantasy romance in itself is genre bending, and I do like fantasy romance that does it well, but I don't know if, I don't know. But there are some fantasy romance that I don't like, so fantasy romance has become more of its own category than I think just genre bending specifically. And then I even think like some of the fantasy I just like leans towards a little bit of a scarier place. The fantasy horrors, like the Rune of Kings has like demons, so like I think that we are adding in these horror elements. I just want, I think, fantasy and books in general, because obviously like Into the Drowning Deep is not fantasy, to add dimension and go a little bit more unique, go places that it's never gone before by adding in the elements from other genres. Dark Matter is a sci-fi thriller, so is Recursion by Blake Crouch, which I liked both. I think those count as genre bending. I am definitely a genre bending type gal. I really like it. That's something I really want to read more of. I feel like we're not seeing a lot of genre bending stories yet in publishing, and I really just want more. Let me know down below. I'm really repeating myself over and over and over again if there's any genre bending stories that you know of, but here are a couple that I think classify. I think we have The Waking Fire by Anthony Ryan. I think that this will lean a little bit into the sci-fi, because if I remember, the dragon blood powers the machines in this world, which is a little bit like techie, a little bit sci-fi-y. So I think that this one will lean a little bit towards sci-fi fantasy. Another one is The Thousand Names, but also Powder Mage. The Thousand Names is by Django Wexler, and Powder Mage is by, oh god, I can't think of the name. It's on the screen, I'm so sorry. These are both flintlock fantasies, so I think again it's just bringing in the element of technology into our fantasy, which although like guns aren't necessarily sci-fi, I think they could be done in a way that adds to it. It brings in that element of some uniqueness. Another one that probably could go on this list is the Mistborn Era 2, as it's like Western fantasy, and I think is just another blending of things we haven't seen done before. But I have read Mistborn Era 2 #1. I didn't overly love it. I don't think it's exactly what I'm looking for in terms of the techie side for genre bending, but we do have these two books that I think are genre bending, maybe? What am I at? I should be writing these down so that, am I only on 6? That feels like not a lot yet. I'm on 7. I think we need one more. 8 seems like a good number of things. 8 seems like a good number of things that I like. So far we have unlikable characters, 3 character stories, animal companions, genre bending, water settings, and morally gray characters, which are, to be honest, all things that I've actually discussed on the channel liking, but I've never really thought so in depth about it to see how it goes into like my actual rating. What else do we have? One more. In horrors, I have talked about liking isolated settings. I think I could probably pinpoint a lot of isolated settings in here. We have Slimer, which is isolated. Near the Bone is isolated. Obviously, Into the Drowning Deep and From Below are both isolated settings. Same with Rolling in the Deep. No Exit is an isolated setting. The Winter's Promise is isolated, kind of. Not really, but like kind of. It's hard to explain. Although I just told you all of that, I'm going to ignore that as my 8th one just because I feel like that's something I already knew I really liked, especially in my horror thrillers. I want something like the boat one that kind of shocked me how much I actually liked it. Or like the 3 character one. Like narrowing it down to me liking 3 character stories was a little insane for me. I definitely thought the more the merrier was the way it goes, but I've had a lot of more the merrier ones burn me, and I've had very little 3 character ones burn me, so very interesting. What about religion-based fantasy? I think that is something I do like. Like, Ilborn has a lot of like religious tones to it. I would say She Who Became the Sun does too. A Touch of Light has a lot of like religious-based tones in it. Nomads of the Sea is very spiritual. It's religion in a different way. It's like it's not religion in terms of like Christianity, but just like it has those like elements of what their religion is and what that means. A lot of it is like spirit-based. The David Bad trilogy I think has like a religious aspect to it. It is really based on there too, separating thoughts and feelings. I know it's not as like heavy in the religion, but I think it is there. The From Blood and Ash stories, they actually do, the whole reasoning for the maiden is religious. Wow. I didn't realize how much I liked religious settings, although it doesn't always work for me because Black Sun has come up a lot of times as a book I should have liked, but I didn't. I think it has morally gray characters. It is 3-character POV. It is religion based. There are animal companions in it. Wow. Black Sun is literally the epitome of a book I should have liked, but I hated. Anyways, back to this. The Poppy War is very religion-based in terms of spirituality and the gods and the goddesses, and how that affects the magic. I want to say Mistborn could be considered, but I get why people wouldn't think that. But I do think Brandon Sanderson as a whole, his writing tends to have a little bit of that religion added to it. It's just a concept in high fantasy, especially, that I really like because I think it just adds more dimension. We have religion out in our world. We know that people do things based on spirituality. We know that people do things based on what they believe in, based on religion and all that. I think it just adds like a little complexity into your story of like reasoning behind things. Speaking of Sanderson, I think the one that started all of it is Elantris. I love Elantris. And it is like heavy religion. Yeah, I think that's something I really gravitate towards in books. Okay, those are like 8 things that I statistically love. Is there a religion base that I dislike? I've been really liking looking at my dislikes. Obviously the Black Sun. I don't think that there's anything that I would call like highly religion based in my dislikes either besides Black Sun. Oh my gosh. Okay, this was actually so cool to see. I'm gonna hand it over to TBR Casty to give you a conclusion to this video. Religion in my stories. Whew. This one was hard too. Another one that I just don't truly know until I've read the story. One that I do know has a lot of religion that I'm very excited, it's very Christianity based, is Empire the Vampire by J. Kristoff. I don't have a physical copy, but I do want to read this. So I do think that this really counts. Also, I think Nevernight would count as morally great characters. Nevernight actually might also be unlikable characters. Now I'm just guessing here, but I think Daughter of the Empire by Raymond E. Feist and Janie Wirtz will have some sort of religion in it. It's very like political. I find with most political stories, we do have some sort of religion intrigue happening. But I am just guessing. I probably could have texted Emma and asked her since she'll know since she bought it for me because she loves it. But yeah, I'm guessing on this one. Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. I said this in the earlier clip that Sanderson just tends to have a lot of religion in his books as it's something that's very real to the world and something I really appreciate. So I'm just assuming that Warbreaker will follow the Sanderson trend and have those religion elements. The Obsidian Tower by Melissa Caruso. I honestly have no idea why I'm assuming. No idea. For some reason, this cover, this back of the book, everything just kind of screams maybe some religious tones to it. So it's on this list, but I could be wrong. The Empress of the Falls by David Hare. This is another just like very heavy political book. So again, I'm just assuming some sort of religion element to it. Also, I guess have told you that like Legacy of Steel and Legacy of Light are both very religion heavy, I think. So those count. But I've already read the first book, so I feel like that wasn't as fun to tell you about. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching. I hope that you found this video intriguing. Did you like it? Let me know. Would you like more videos based kind of like this, where we're just like deep diving into statistics and this kind of concept? Let me know. Thanks again to Meg with Books for creating the idea, at least for the first time I saw it. And then also, if you made it all the way to the end of this video and you'd like to leave me an emoji just to say you were here, leave me some kind of like smiling emoji, like a smiley face, something happy, because we're happy that we have now found reasons that we might give books 5 stars. And if you'd like to connect with me on other platforms, my Bookstagram, my Book Twitter, my Goodreads, and my Patreon are all linked in the description bar below. Have yourselves an absolutely remarkable day.